On the evening of December 18th, 1998, a brutal triple homicide and arson occurred in the Salishan neighborhood of Tacoma, Washington. The victims were 26-year-old Linda Tran, who was 7 months pregnant, and her 2 young children, 9-year-old Patricia and 1-year-old Austin. Witnesses observed a violent confrontation in the front yard before the family was chased inside their home by a man wielding a baseball bat. Minutes later, the house exploded into flames. Despite the public nature of the attack and the presence of eyewitnesses, the case remains unsolved over 2 decades later. Linda, born in Vietnam in 1972, led a life with early struggle, rebellion, and a powerful eventual transformation into a devoted mother. At the age of 6, she immigrated to the United States with her family in 1978, joining the wave of Vietnamese refugees seeking stability and opportunity in the Pacific Northwest. When the family settled in Tacoma, the city was experiencing a growing Vietnamese community that offered cultural familiarity in a new land. As she assimilated into American culture, Linda navigated the often difficult dual identity of being a Vietnamese daughter in a traditional household while growing up in the gritty environment of 1980s Tacoma. By her teenage years, Linda began to go against the expectations of her family. She attended Lincoln High School, a large and diverse school in the heart of Tacoma's South End, but her academic career was turbulent. During her adolescence, she entered a rebellious phase that was difficult for her parents, particularly her father, Kiet. She ran away from home on multiple occasions and frequently skipped school, seeking independence in ways that worried her family. This period of instability culminated during her senior year of high school when she became pregnant at the age of 17. The pregnancy led her to drop out of Lincoln High School before graduation, which was a major deviation from what her parents had hoped for her. In 1989, Linda gave birth to her daughter Patricia. Family members, including her sister Loanna, later acknowledged that Linda was initially overwhelmed by the responsibilities of parenthood. During Patricia's earliest years, Linda was inconsistent in her role, struggling to balance her own youth with the demands of raising a child. Recognizing that Linda needed time to mature, her parents stepped in to help raise Patricia. For a significant portion of her early childhood, Patricia lived primarily with her grandparents while Linda navigated her own path. This arrangement, while necessary, created a complex family dynamic. Patricia bonded deeply with her grandparents, viewing their home as a second and often primary sanctuary. However, this period of separation seemed to serve as a catalyst for Linda's eventual maturation. After spending roughly 2 years away from the daily intensity of child caring, Linda began to yearn for a closer connection with her daughter and a return to the family fold. The birth of her son Austin on February 18th, 1997 marked the definitive turning point in Linda's life. By this time, she was 25 years old and had outgrown the rebellion of her teenage years. Friends and family described a complete shift in her demeanor. The young woman who had once run away from home was replaced by a settled, attentive mother who was fiercely protective of her children. She moved into a duplex in the Salishan housing development, determined to create a stable, independent home for her family. By December 1998, Linda was 26 years old and 7 months pregnant with her 3rd child. She had already named the baby boy Joshua, signaling her excitement and readiness to expand her family further. She was also taking steps to secure her financial future, enrolling in cosmetology classes with the goal of becoming a beautician. However, this seemingly promising outlook on the future would come crashing down soon enough. The evening of Friday, December 18th, 1998 began as a typical night for the Tran family. Around 7:30 to 7:45 p.m., Linda and her children were still at the home of her father. Linda's daughter Patricia had pleaded with her grandfather to let her stay the night. This was not an unusual request, as Patricia had lived with Kiet for years and viewed her grandparents as additional primary caregivers. However, Linda insisted that they return to their own duplex. When Linda's father said that they could stay, Linda refused, saying that she needed to be home since someone was coming over to drop off Christmas presents for the kids. At approximately 7:45 p.m., Linda, Patricia, and 22-month-old Austin left. It was a dark, rainy night, and on their way home, Linda made a brief, mundane stop at a grocery store to buy fruit. This errand further suggests her state of mind was calm and routine, completely unaware of the danger waiting for her. The drive to her duplex took less than 30 minutes. At approximately 8:15 p.m., Linda pulled into her driveway. It appears the visitor she was expecting was already there, or arrived moments later. Neighbors who had become the primary witnesses to the initial stage of the crime reported seeing a confrontation almost immediately after Linda arrived. Eyewitnesses described seeing a man arguing with Linda. The argument was loud enough to draw attention, but short-lived. The Christmas presents, which Linda had told her father were the reason for their return, were later found strewn across the front lawn. This evidence suggests that the exchange of gifts may have begun before turning violent, or that the killer used the boxes as a prop to get close before discarding them to launch his attack. The man was seen brandishing a baseball bat or a similar large blunt instrument. He did not just attack Linda outside, he corralled her. Witnesses reported seeing the man chase Linda back toward her front door. More disturbingly, he was seen coaxing or ordering the terrified children to follow their mother back into the house. One witness account describes the man standing in the doorway, bat in hand, effectively herding the family inside like cattle before shutting the front door behind them. This action sealed their fate, moving the violence from the public view of the street to the closed-off doors of their home. For the next 10 minutes, neighbors heard the sounds of a brutal massacre occurring inside the duplex. Through the walls of the duplex, screams from Linda and her children could be heard. Loud banging noises and the sound of breaking glass could also be heard repeatedly. Recognizing the severity of the sounds, a neighbor called the police to report the incident. The caller described the man with the bat and the violence they were hearing. During this short 10-minute window, the culprit not only killed Linda and her family, but he also prepared to totally destroy the scene. Forensic evidence would later show that gasoline had been poured extensively throughout the home. This likely indicates that the killer had brought the accelerant with him, another sign of premeditation. At 8:25 p.m., while the neighbor was still on the line with the dispatcher, a massive explosion ripped through the building. The force of the blast was immense. The News Tribune reported that the explosion was so powerful it blew out the windows and exterior walls of the home. One witness described seeing the sky visible through a gap where the roof and wall had separated. Immediately afterward, the man was seen by witnesses fleeing the scene through the back of the burning house. Detectives later shared that the explosion was so great that the killer himself was likely injured as well. They shared that the flashover from gasoline vapors likely damaged parts of his face, eyebrows, and clothes. In fact, many say that he only narrowly escaped his own death. During the escape, the man was seen going down a dark alleyway where a dark-colored sedan was waiting. Upon reaching the vehicle, the killer sped off. It was never confirmed whether or not this vehicle had a getaway driver in waiting or if the killer himself was the one driving. It took about 5 minutes for the Tacoma Fire Department units to arrive, but by that time, the home was already fully engulfed. The fire burned with such intensity due to the accelerant that rescue was impossible. When firefighters finally suppressed the flames enough to enter, they found the bodies of Linda, Patricia, and Austin clustered together. Despite the fire, the autopsy revealed that they had smoke in their lungs and were breathing when the fire started. The blunt force trauma had incapacitated them, leaving them unable to escape the flames that consumed their home. Fire investigators later determined that the amount of accelerant used was overkill. One of the most specific leads in the early days of the investigation was Linda's own statement to her father that she was returning home because someone was coming to drop off Christmas presents. Detectives viewed this as the key to the killer's identity. Police processed the Christmas presents left behind for fingerprints and DNA, but the rain and the chaos of the scene made it so that there were no definitive matches. Linda had children by 2 different fathers, so understandably, both men were considered immediate persons of interest. According to police statements, both men were cooperative and were ultimately ruled out as suspects. Their alibis held up and no physical evidence linked them to the scene. An intriguing avenue of investigation focused on Linda's lifestyle. Detectives learned that she frequented local pull-tab lobbies and private card games in the Tacoma area. Investigators hypothesized that Linda might have accumulated a gambling debt she could not repay. In the underground economy of private gambling, debt collection can turn violent. Detectives audited her finances and interviewed acquaintances from the gambling circuit, trying to locate potential loan sharks who operated in the area. While they confirmed she gambled, they found no evidence of a debt large enough to warrant a triple homicide. The contract killing theory also didn't align with the sloppy, high-risk nature of using a baseball bat and arson in a dense residential neighborhood. Immediately after news spread of the incident, the public and media began attempting to connect this incident with the Trang Dai Cafe massacre, which had occurred just 5 months earlier in July 1998. Police probed for links but found no real connection. This previous incident occurred at 1:30 a.m. when Asian gang members opened fire on the restaurant's occupants in a gang retaliatory shooting. 5 people were killed and 5 others were wounded. All of the victims were roughly the same age as Linda and all were Vietnamese. But any ties that were seemingly visible were merely superficial. Eyewitnesses quickly provided descriptions to police, and a composite sketch was created and released to the media. The sketch was based on multiple witness accounts but lacked the specificity needed to generate productive leads. The suspect was described as a dark-skinned male, with witnesses offering varying descriptions of his race. Some described him as African American, others noted he could be Asian, and several suggested he might be of mixed race. All witnesses agreed he appeared to be approximately 30 years old at the time of the crime and had a muscular build. He was wearing dark clothing and a dark knit cap or beanie. The physical description was frustratingly generic, a general profile that could fit thousands of men in the Tacoma area. If you recall, I mentioned that the killer was likely hurt by the flames during the explosion. Acting on this theory, police checked local hospitals, urgent care clinics, and private doctors in the Tacoma area for men seeking treatment for suspicious burn injuries in late December 1998. Detectives reasoned that a killer fleeing a massive explosion would bear visible signs of injury that might cause him to seek medical attention. Despite these efforts, no matches emerged. Either the killer's injuries were minor enough that he did not seek medical care, or he traveled outside the Tacoma area for treatment, or he delayed seeking medical attention until the initial investigation surge had subsided. As for the getaway vehicle, most investigators leaned toward believing that a getaway driver was prepared and that the killer did not drive himself. However, they were never able to identify this potential second person and have never tracked down the car or determined a plate number. Another interesting detail involves a window in the back of Linda's duplex, which was broken the day before the murders. Linda discovered the damage and immediately called her cousin, panic-stricken at the possibility of a break-in. The cousin called the police to report the vandalism. Linda and her cousin checked the home thoroughly and found no intruder inside. Police responded and documented the broken window as vandalism, apparently unrelated to any larger criminal activity. However, in the context of the murders that occurred the very next evening, the broken window took on new significance. Detectives now theorize that the broken window was not a random act, but rather a deliberate move by the killer. He may have broken the window to test the security of the home, to see how neighbors would react to a disturbance, or most likely to create an easy entry and exit point for the following night's attack. The broken window location at the back of the duplex is notably the same area where the killer fled after setting the fire. Police believe the killer may have used that access point to make his escape. This theory suggests an additional level of premeditation. The killer did not wake up on December 18th with a sudden impulse to murder. He conducted reconnaissance the previous day, testing security measures and planning his route both into and out of the home. Eventually, the case went largely dormant for over a decade, relegated to a filing cabinet in a cold case archive. However, in 2015, approximately 17 years after the murders, the Tacoma Police Department launched a renewed push to solve the case. A new generation of detectives took up the file with fresh perspectives and new investigative tools unavailable in 1998. In 2015, authorities announced that they were submitting evidence collected from the crime scene to private laboratories for advanced DNA phenotyping. Police did not publicly release the results of these DNA tests or announce whether they produced matches to any known individuals. This silence may indicate that the testing did not yield conclusive results, or it may simply reflect a police strategy of maintaining evidence secrecy to prevent a suspect from knowing what forensic evidence exists against them. As of 2025, the case remains unsolved. No arrest has been made, and the killer, if still alive, remains free. On March 30th, 1995, the city of Somerville, Massachusetts was shaken to its core when the body of 17-year-old Deanna J. Cremin was discovered behind a senior housing complex just steps from her home. What should have been an ordinary Wednesday night, including homework, TV, and a walk home from her boyfriend's house, ended in a brutal murder that remains unsolved 3 decades later. Deanna Cremin was born on March 26, 1978, and was a junior at Somerville High School, where she was described as a well-liked student with a genuine passion for working with children. Her dream was to become a preschool teacher, and she actively worked toward that goal by volunteering at the Child Development Program at her school, where she worked with 3rd graders at the East Somerville Community School. To supplement her income and gain work experience, she had been employed as a part-time cashier at the Star Market for approximately 3 months before her death. Those who knew Deanna painted a picture of a vibrant, caring teenager. Her co-workers described her as a nice kid who always came into work with a massive smile on her face. Stephanie Shute, a mother for whom Deanna regularly babysat for, recalled her as an amazing and beautiful girl who everyone liked. Deanna's mother, Catherine, called her daughter a real goofball who always stuck up for the underdog and valued helping people in need. Catherine remembered how Deanna would steal her older sister's clothing and consistently cover for her younger brother whenever he got into mischief. After getting out of school on March 29, 1995, Deanna made her way into Boston, taking the opportunity to go shopping downtown while her mother was finishing up her workday in the city. What Deanna purchased or where exactly she wandered during those afternoon hours has never been publicly detailed, but it was believed to be relatively mundane. As the afternoon wore on and evening approached, Catherine finished her shift and made her way to the bus that would carry her back to Somerville. It's unclear if this was by chance or arranged, but both mother and daughter found themselves sharing that bus ride home together, traveling from Boston toward Broadway near their Somerville residence. This would be the last time Catherine saw her daughter alive. The bus dropped them near Broadway, and from there, Catherine headed home while Deanna made her way to visit her boyfriend, 18-year-old Thomas LeBlanc. Visiting him on Wednesday evenings had become something of a routine for Deanna. They had been dating for approximately a year at this point, and their relationship appeared stable and affectionate to those who observed it. Friends who knew them described Tommy and Deanna as very close and noted that they really loved each other. The hours Deanna spent at Tommy's apartment on March 29th remain somewhat shrouded in the limited accounts that have been made public over the years. What is known is that the couple settled into their typical routine of television and homework. Tommy's apartment at 419 Broadway was located approximately half a mile from Deanna's home on Jock Street, a short walk through the familiar streets of Winter Hill, a neighborhood where everyone seemed to know everyone else. Deanna had a 10 p.m. curfew, a boundary set by her mother that she generally respected. As the evening progressed and the clock crept toward that deadline, Deanna apparently recognized she would not make it home in time. Rather than simply showing up late without warning, she picked up the phone and called her mother to explain the situation. During this phone call, she informed Catherine that she was going to be late getting home. The call ended with the mother and daughter saying "I love you" to each other. As 10 p.m. came and went, Deanna eventually decided that she would head home. According to the account Tommy would later provide to both Deanna's mother and the police, he had not eaten dinner that evening and decided to order food for delivery. Under normal circumstances, according to Catherine and others who knew the couple's habits, Tommy always walked Deanna the entire way home after their dates. However, he decided to not walk Deanna back on this particular night. According to Tommy, he walked Deanna only half of the way, leaving her at the intersection of Heath Street and Bond Street. From that intersection, it was just a short straight shot home. Tommy told investigators that he wanted to make sure he was back at his apartment in time to meet the delivery driver. When questioned about this decision, he was reportedly able to produce a receipt for the food order, which investigators could use to verify the timeline he provided. The existence of this receipt has been cited by some observers as supporting Tommy's account, though it does not definitively prove he was home at the time the food arrived, only that an order was placed. The exact time Deanna and Tommy parted ways at Heath and Bond Streets has never been publicly specified, but it's estimated that they parted sometime between 10:30 and 11 p.m. As Tommy turned back toward Broadway, Deanna continued on alone. Catherine had fallen asleep on the couch after her earlier phone conversation with Deanna. When she awoke around midnight, her first instinct was to check whether her daughter had returned. A glance around the house and a peek into Deanna's bedroom confirmed that she had not. Catherine reached for the phone and dialed the number for Deanna's new pager, a recent birthday gift that was supposed to help them stay connected. However, no response came. She tried again and still nothing. With each unanswered page, the worry in Catherine's stomach intensified. But instead of constantly thinking about how her daughter was in trouble, she tried to form logical explanations to calm her fears. She told herself that Deanna likely just fell asleep at Tommy's when they were watching TV. After convincing herself that this was surely the reason for her delay, Catherine went to sleep as she had an early shift the next morning. When she woke up the following day, March 30th, she went to her daughter's room to make sure she had come back home. But upon opening her bedroom door, the worry that she suppressed the previous night all came surging back, as Deanna was still nowhere to be seen. She immediately called Tommy's house, hoping to hear Deanna's voice, but instead, she reached Tommy himself. Instead of asking if Deanna was present, Catherine yelled at Tommy, demanding that her daughter come home immediately, but Tommy simply paused a moment before explaining that Deanna wasn't with him. He elaborated, saying he walked her halfway home the night before, leaving her at the corner of Heath and Bond Streets. Catherine did not know how to digest this new information and hung up the phone. She still had obligations to attend to, such as work, but something like this couldn't just be swept under the rug. Before leaving, she asked her husband, Michael, Deanna's stepfather, to call Somerville High School as soon as the administrative offices opened. The hope was that Deanna had somehow made other arrangements, perhaps staying with a friend, and had simply gone directly to school without coming home first. Michael made the call that morning, hoping to hear that Deanna had been marked present, that she was sitting in class at that very moment, wondering why her stepfather was checking up on her. The news he received instead shattered any remaining hope. Deanna had been marked absent and had not shown up. While the Cremin family was frantically trying to locate their missing daughter, the grim answer to their questions was being discovered just a short distance away. The James Corbett Apartments on Jacques Street was a senior housing complex in the Winter Hill neighborhood located less than a block from the Cremin family home. Behind this complex, a walking path ran along a chain-link fence at the top of a steep embankment that separated the senior housing development from another housing complex on Mystic Avenue. This path, while not immediately obvious to outsiders, was well known to locals as a shortcut. At approximately 8 a.m. on the morning of March 30th, 2 elementary school children were using exactly this shortcut when they stumbled upon something that would haunt them forever. Lying along the path next to the fence was the body of a young woman. The children initially thought she might be asleep. The posture of the body, the stillness of the early morning, and the innocent minds of the children all contributed to this misperception. In a particularly cruel twist of fate, these children who made the discovery were not strangers to Deanna. They were children she had babysat. The teenager who had cared for them, played with them, and watched over them in their own homes now lay lifeless on a path they traveled daily. When officials arrived, Deanna's body was found lying on her back, partially undressed, immediately suggesting assault. She was wearing a red jacket that was open at the front, revealing that she had nothing on her upper body beneath it. Her pants had been pulled completely off her right leg and remained halfway down her left thigh. Her right shoe was missing, while her left foot still wore both a sock and a sneaker. The location itself presented investigators with immediate questions. Getting to the spot required walking down a path that connected Jacques Street to the backyard of the senior housing complex. Anyone traveling this route would pass a fence and several apartment windows while descending a full flight of 13 stairs. It was not an area someone would simply stumble upon by accident, yet the fact that children used it as a school shortcut demonstrated it was a path known to locals and frequently traveled. Most significantly, the location where the body was found was less than 500 feet from where Tommy claimed he had last seen her alive. Whatever happened to Deanna happened quickly, within a confined area of the neighborhood she had known her entire life. As news of the discovery began circulating through the tight-knit Somerville community, the Cremin family was already in contact with police about their missing daughter. In a detail that added insult to tragedy, police initially told the family that Deanna had died of a substance overdose. This information was not only incorrect but seemingly inexplicable given the circumstances of discovery. The autopsy later revealed that Deanna's cause of death was strangulation. Additionally, it was confirmed that she had been raped. Naturally, investigators turned their attention first to Tommy LeBlanc, the last known person to see Deanna alive. Tommy told police essentially the same story he had relayed to Catherine. Friends who observed their relationship said Tommy and Deanna were very close and that he wasn't the type of person who would do such a thing. Tommy's mother stated her son was extremely upset about Deanna's death, and Catherine recalled Tommy holding her hand at Deanna's wake as he sobbed, asking, "What am I going to do now?" Despite these displays of emotion, suspicion surrounding Tommy never fully dissipated. He was placed on the investigators' short list of potential suspects and, according to sources, has always been on the list and has never been off of it. The case against Tommy as a suspect grew more circumstantial yet more compelling in May 1995, when his own mother, Susan, filed a restraining order against him. It was the third such order in recent years. In her affidavit, Susan wrote, "When Tommy goes into a rage, I fear that my life is in jeopardy." She described how Tommy would throw lamps and furniture at her in an effort to maintain control of her and stated that living with him felt like being in a prison. A 1993 affidavit from a previous restraining order revealed that Tommy had a history of violent behavior dating back to childhood. His mother described him as a very angry child since the age of 5 or 6. Perhaps most disturbingly, Susan revealed that when Tommy was younger, he had shot her cat 3 times with an airsoft gun. Catherine has long considered Tommy the most likely suspect. She has pointed to several troubling facts. After every date prior to that night, Tommy always called the house to say goodnight to Deanna, but not on the night of the murder. Surely, he had no idea that Deanna wouldn't arrive back home, so why wouldn't he have called? Catherine also revealed she had gone through dozens of letters Tommy had sent to Deanna and reached the conclusion he was disturbingly obsessed with her. Most damning, perhaps, has been Tommy's lack of cooperation with the investigation. According to Catherine, Tommy made a promise to her after Deanna's murder that he would do, quote, whatever it took to clear his name, including taking a polygraph test. He never followed through. During a grand jury proceeding, Tommy reportedly refused to answer questions. He also refused to speak further with investigators after his initial interviews and eventually moved away from the area. In response, Catherine said, "Every promise the kid made to me after Deanna's murder turned out to be a lie. He's refused to cooperate with police, refused a lie detector test, refused to deal with us." Despite this circumstantial evidence and behavioral red flags, Tommy has never been charged with any crime related to Deanna's death. A second person of interest emerged early in the investigation, a 36-year-old Somerville firefighter named Charles Houghton. Charles came from a prominent local family and had been a firefighter since 1984. He worked out of the Central Fire Station on Broadway, which was located directly across the street from the Star Market where Deanna worked part-time. According to investigators and family members, Charles had reportedly taken a particular interest in Deanna and was described as having been fixated on her. Police questioned Charles at least 3 times early in the investigation, with the first interview occurring just 1 day after Deanna's body was found. He was reportedly cooperative and, according to at least one source, provided samples that could be forensically tested against evidence police already possessed. Notably, he had worked the Wednesday morning before Deanna's murder was discovered. He was scheduled to work again that Sunday, but called out sick twice, possibly, some speculated, because of the scrutiny he was under. Police did not publicly identify Charles as a suspect, and he has never faced any charges. The family later learned that Charles was eventually removed from the investigators' official list of suspects, though some believe this may have been a strategic decision rather than a definitive clearance. A third individual was also identified as a person of interest, was a man named Anthony Delgado, who was later imprisoned at Massachusetts Correctional Institution for unrelated crimes. The family was told that Anthony, when interviewed, denied killing Deanna, but was open to sharing what he would have done if he were the one to commit the crime. Aside from this chilling detail, little public information exists about what connected Anthony to the investigation or why he was considered a person of interest. Shortly after the murder, investigators announced they were searching for a potential witness who had been seen in the area around the time of the crime. A sketch and description were released to the public displaying a white male with short dark hair between 40 and 45 years old, 5 feet 9 inches to 5 feet 11 inches tall, and weighing between 160 and 170 pounds. Assistant District Attorney Martin Murphy said the following: "At this point, we have no evidence to believe he is a suspect. We believe he was in the area possibly at the time of the murder, and we seek to obtain information from him about what he may have seen or heard." This individual was never publicly identified or located. For Catherine and the rest of Deanna's family, the search for answers has been an all-consuming mission spanning 3 decades. In September 1995, just 6 months after her daughter's murder, Catherine said, "I'm relentless about this. I will not let this go. I want the person who killed my daughter punished." The toll on the family has been immense. In 1997, Catherine spoke publicly from a substance rehabilitation program, revealing that she had relied heavily on tranquilizers and alcohol to cope with the ordeal. "What this has done to us is just totally unfair," she said. Her marriage to Michael, already struggling, eventually fell apart. She lost her job because she could not stop crying at work. For 18 years, Catherine pored over photo albums of Deanna's life, searching page by page for meaning and clues. The pages were turned so often, they came free from their binding. Deanna's older sister, Christine, has described it being in denial about her sister's death, unable to accept it or allow herself to think about who killed her. At a 2014 memorial, she was quoted saying, "I was 18 when Deanna died. I will never forget the day my sister was murdered. It was the worst day of my life." Deanna's father, Albert Rogers, has remained equally committed to finding justice. At the 2014 ceremony, he expressed hope, stating, "It's clear we have a great team fighting for us now, and I have hope and I believe justice is going to be served. Her memory will always be alive and in my heart." The family has employed every means possible to generate leads. Starting in 1996, they began posting billboards near the site where Deanna was killed, offering a reward for information and including a haunting message saying, "You know what you did to me. How much longer must I wait? Please help make my time in heaven restful." The reward fund has grown steadily over the years, from $10,000 in 1995 to $20,000 by 2005, and today the reward stands at $70,000.